Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa, and I'm joined here today by a very special friend and partner of mine, Jon Kuttin. Jon is one of the top five Barron's advisors in the industry, runs a multi north of $50 million practice out of Ameriprise. And today we're going to be talking about something really special. Something that Jon and I have been working on for a while now, and we are super excited to talk about the Financial Advisor Success Syndicate, which is a mastermind that we're sort of born from conversations that Jon and I have on a routine basis about just stuff going on in the industry and what we think financial advisors and practitioners really need to know in different areas. So Jon, welcome to the show, and I think this is going to be a pretty awesome conversation. How you doing?
I can't wait, Frank, and thanks for having me back. And, it's interesting. The last time I was on your show, you and I teased each other that kind of like once you and I start talking that we can't stop, and we both like to share ideas. And, to our listeners, you can probably appreciate that. So it's now gone on to a continued love fest. And Frank and I have had hours and hours and hours and hours of conversation. And it actually led to this amazing idea to talk about what you just described, Frank, in this Financial Advisor Success Syndicate that looking forward to kind of sharing with everybody. So I can't think of somebody that I would be more excited, honestly, with partnering on it than you. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
So why don't you, as you sort of position things on calls that we have, why don't you tell the audience from your perspective, what the Financial Advisor Success Syndicate is in your mind, and so they have some idea, and then we'll get into sort of like the details and how they can sign up for it and all that stuff.
Yeah, and for our listeners, what Frank just did is he now knows me well enough to know whenever I'm on a group call, I go, let me frame it out. That's the actual words that I use, Frank, just so you know. So yeah, so to kind of frame it out, I mean, here's how I look at it. And I described it this way to some colleagues recently, and it resonated with them. So, for advisors listening, and if you think about, we all kind of understand the family office space, right? So family office space is around, providing a set of solutions for a high net worth client generally where, right, you do everything for that client, whether it be tax planning, estate and elder care work, financial planning, insurance, you name it, bill pay, like kind of one-stop shop for a affluent, high net worth or ultra high net worth family. What we're really building with the Financial Advisor Success Syndicate is a family office for a successful financial advisor or a budding successful financial advisor who genuinely wants to grow and take their business to the next level. So as I look back and really I like to call it connecting the dots backwards. I've been in the industry since 94, and I've, now gone from being a startup business to $1 million producer to 2 to 10 to 25, 50. And this year, God willing, we'll break 70 million in gross revenue. And we're a little north of 9 billion of custodied assets under management.
So to my listeners, that means that he knows his shit. So just FYI.
Or so it would seem, I guess, right? But as I do connect the dots backwards, Frank, there were certain things, right, that I did in each part of the career that I could look back and say, in the spirit of Dan Sullivan's book, 10X is easier than 2X, that was my 10X. And over my 29-ish year career, what's actually happened is I've employed, without knowing what it was, Dan Sullivan's who, not how concept, right? And I've been fortunate to meet really successful people who've gone really deep in certain areas of the industry. And those are the people that, as I look back, I mean, it's my team as well, but I could look back and say, because I know Frank LaRosa, I've learned a ton about recruiting and the industry and how to structure deals and what all the kind of competition is doing out there, and become a student of that, and learn from you. I've learned the same from, we'll talk more about it, from some of the other founding members. So really what I wanted to do, Frank, and you and I kind of brought this to light together, was, well, how could we put together the family office, right, for financial advisors, which is how we came up with the name of the Financial Advisor Success Syndicate. These are the people whose shoulders I've stood on, that I believe that if other advisors in the industry can get access to people like yourself and the other founding members, that it will help them create what I call quantum growth in their business, because you can't be an expert at everything. And I feel blessed every day when I get to speak to all the founding members, and like, man, it's great I got Frank in my life. It's great I got David Grau or Ray Kelly or John Randall or Tina Beck, so on, et cetera. And I forgot somebody there. I'm not sure who I forgot, but we'll figure it out before the end today. It was you, actually, or me, that I forgot. Exactly. So that's really how I look at it. And it's just all about very successful founding members, not to brag on everybody a little bit, who just want to help advisors that are already out in the world trying to help, trying to give away intellectual capital to help people become more successful. And the truth of the matter is, this is going to bring it to a whole nother level, put it in one spot, and even give people access to kind of, what you and I have been talking about, sort of the behind the curtains, right? The real deal, the stuff that isn't necessarily for just the people who might listen to our podcast to hear, but going even a little bit deeper than we do on those type of mediums.
Like an example, I'll give the audience an example. You've done a tremendous job with acquisitions and purchasing practices, rolling them in. And, wouldn't it be awesome? And I talk to advisors, and again, this is where some of this came from for the audience. These are the kinds of things that John and I talk about. I talk to a lot of advisors that want to get into the space. They want to do acquisitions. They may or may not be at a firm that can or cannot do, and that doesn't really matter. But the point is, they don't know where to start. They don't know how to have a conversation. And so you and I talk about, man, wouldn't it be great for them if they had some basis or a resource that they can go to? Because a lot of firms don't necessarily have those resources. But to be able to talk to an advisor like yourself, because you are and were an advisor that also did it, that was in the trenches, that had the conversations, that has demonstrated success. So wouldn't it be great if they could jump on a call with someone like you, or David, or some other folks that we have in the group, and just ask questions about, how do I start? How do I do this? How do I structure this deal? I got a buddy of mine that has a $500,000 practice, and I don't know how to structure the deal so that I can protect myself, or whatever it is, right? Where there's sort of like, no obligation like that they're going to talk to you, and you're only going to help them if you're involved in the purchase. Like, that's not what this is about. And that's what we're trying to bring to the table, that this is a group. And again, it's a sharing, it's a mastermind. And the whole point of a mastermind is to have multiple brains together, all from different, I'll say walks of life, but different experiences, different skill sets, which is why, you mentioned a couple of the folks before that have different skill sets that maybe aren't M&A. Mine's recruiting. Tina's is CMO, right? John is coaching and development and all of those things. So be able to have those resources in a group. We're going to have a system. Well, we have a system. I don't know. It's sort of like almost think of it as like a private Facebook group, but it's on a different platform because we don't want to share that information with anyone that's not part of the group. But it's really a place where you can come as an advisor to learn without any sort of obligation to anyone. And sort of for my audience, and John sort of has followed some of them, and I send him some of the videos and some of the information that we get. I'm part of a group called the Arte Syndicate, which is a mastermind of entrepreneurs. It's just entrepreneurs, all different types of industries. And it was founded by a friend of mine, Ed Milet and Andy Frisella. And it's been great for me as a business owner to be able to reach out to folks that are in that group about business related stuff. The challenge that I had found and I find is they're from all different industries. And so sometimes I need information, which is where I pick John's brain all the time, right? I need information and guidance, or just want to talk to somebody about something that understands our world, the financial service space. And so that's where all this stuff came about. And John and I, we should do something like that for the financial service industry. And that's where the Financial Advisor Success Syndicate came from. And so we're really excited about it. John, can you talk a little bit about what you think some of the things are that members of the group are going to get? Is it quarterly meetings? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, happy to hit that. And you know me, I've got to comment on some of the things that you said as well. So, well said, and couldn't agree more. I think about it this way, Frank. It's about having an abundance mentality, right? And we've been talking a lot about that. It's, when you think about it, I am a just huge believer, and I know Frank is a huge believer. And interestingly, all of our syndicate founding members is that we are lifetime learners. We are constantly reading, listening to podcasts, going to training. I mean, Frank just talked about being part of the Arete Syndicate. Why is he part of it? To get better, to learn from someone who is more successful than he was in a different industry, but in business in general. And we've put together a cast of characters who are very successful in their own fields. And ultimately, there are advisors in the industry who I could continue to learn from and that are way more successful than I am. And I aspire to meet them and learn from them. And we kind of looked at it and said, well, I've been able to build a pretty large business. And ultimately, I've been able to learn from other people like Frank and the other members. So why would we not want to find other abundant mentality folks that are what I like to call lifetime learners, meaning they want to get better. They genuinely want mentorship. They're striving to be successful. And all of our founding partners, it's interesting. Not only are they really good at the thing they do, Frank's great at recruiting and M&A, and all the folks are great at what they do, but they're also genuinely entrepreneurs that are very, very good leaders that are pioneers in their own field, right? So when I think about, to get to your question, Frank, what will the members actually get is, first and foremost, I think they'll get a group of founding members that genuinely are 100% focused on just providing value, because it feels good selfishly for all of us to just help, give it away for free in the community, help people get better. Because selfishly, I feel really good when I get notes from advisors saying, hey, you were really helpful. Your podcast is great. Or I heard you speak somewhere and it was amazing. And I want to do more of it. And this gives me, because of technology and the other members, the ability to do this like we are right now from the comfort of my home. I don't need to jump on a plane. Neither does the advisors in the community. Neither do you, right? We don't both need to be flying to Florida today, leaving our families. So it just gives us a whole nother means of connecting with advisors on our terms and on their terms. And I said the other day to someone that it's almost like, man, if you could get all the founding members on one stage, right, in Florida or California or whatever it may be, and you can get access to them and hear their own thoughts, ask them questions, et cetera, how much would you pay for that to meet some of the folks in our organization? Just ask questions about, how do you do this? And how would you do this? And I'm working on that. And what would it look like? So that to me is a big piece of it. And I want to tie in the people in the group, the founding members are special people that genuinely are killing it in their own business and just want to help. And I think that's really important. When I get into what will happen in the group,
I look at, you're talking about this, I'm thinking about this. And for the audience, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see this. If you're not, you imagine I'm holding up and I'll cover the name of the individual, but I'm holding up a check that I had actually an actual check that I had an advisor call me, and just, I wasn't helping them. I wasn't representing them to the firm. that they were going to, but he just, called and asked for my advice and happened to be free. So I was able to talk to him on sort of deal negotiation and coming to things that he should be looking for. And, I gave him 45 minutes or so of time. He actually sent me a check. I didn't cash it because I just not why I did it, right? I happened to have some time, and he follows me on Instagram, and I appreciate the fact that he follows me on Instagram and reached out to me. So I thought I can do that. And so for me, I love doing that, right? I just can't do it. I can't take individual phone calls all day long for that kind of advice, if I'm not working with them. So for me, this is where I get to do that, where I get to pay it forward. I'm a huge, like you said, an abundance mentality. I'm not worried about giving some secret advice away that I have, because none of it's secret, but just helping advisors. So this platform allows, will give me the opportunity, and you'll go through some of the structure that you think that we're going to have to someone might pose a question in the group about deal structure, or, I'm this kind of practitioner. Who's had experience with these 4 or 5 firms? And, so it allows us to help without any type of obligation from someone. So I just thought it was funny that you're mentioning that.
No, it's amazing. No one's ever sent me a check for my time without me asking. So that's pretty darn impressive. But I think, again, I think we've really assembled a special group of people who genuinely, not to pat us all on the back, but we've made it. We're on the other side of the complexity, and we've been very successful, and we want to give back, and it feels good to give back. And, the interesting part is, I don't think any of us really know where this thing leads, other than it seems like a lot of fun right now to help a lot of people. And as you were describing it, Frank, I don't even know that we have everything completely figured out, other than what we have is really good intentions. And I'll describe the basics of how we're thinking about it, right? So first, we've said this before to the world, and we're going to say it a lot, is it's for nice people only, right? So there's no jerks allowed. It's financial advisors that have had a level of success. And in fairness, we're talking more about that. Is that $500,000 of minimum production? Is it $1 million? Is it somewhere north of that or in between those numbers? And we're still playing with that a little bit as we're receiving applications. The good news is we already have a couple of 100 applications, and we've just started to put the word out a little bit. So we know there's going to be a lot of interest from advisors, which we're really excited about. But ultimately, think about, as you said earlier in the podcast, Frank, a community, right, where there are basically going to be inside of the community, each of us will have our own online classroom, right? So all of the founding members, and we will be posting all of our proprietary content that we either put out to the world or that we will only put out to the community inside of our own private classroom. So there'll be an opportunity for you to just come to one place and say, well, what's Jon Kuttin putting out there? What's John Randall? What's Ray Kelly? What's Frank LaRosa? What's Tina Beck? What's David Grau Jr.? What are the things that they're thinking about, talking about, putting out? So you don't have to go all over the world to find it, right? Secondly, you'll be in a community with other like-minded members, and you'll have the ability to ask questions. And all of us will spend a lot of time in there so that we can actually answer your questions in a group format. So if you're thinking about, hey, what would you be thinking about as it relates to putting together an agreement for a financial advisor? You'll get an answer, right, from me or Frank or David or whoever the appropriate party would be. If you're thinking about how to drive more referrals in your business, same type of thing. I forgot Anton's name before. That's what I'm forgetting. If you had something about Anton Anderson and we're interested in the virtual family office or partnering with a CPA, Anton or I might answer that question. So you could go directly to us with a question. To Frank's point, instead of us taking a 30-minute phone call to do someone a favor, and I probably get a dozen requests like that a month, and it sounds like you do as well, Frank. And I take a lot of them, by the way. You could do it through this community.
Yeah, we just can't take all of them. It's not possible.
Exactly right. So there's the private rooms of all of us where content will live. There's the community where you can ask questions and also be in a position that you're not only asking questions of us, but you'll have other peers that can give their feedback as well, because we don't have all the answers. And there are many of your peers out there that can be super helpful in answering those questions as well.
On that topic, before you get into that one piece, that's the power of the Arte Syndicate group that I'm in, right? It's great that Ed Milet, and he's a $1 billion guy and really, really ultra successful, and same thing with Andy Frisella. But the power of the group actually comes from all of the other members being open to helping each other, not just Ed and Andy, right? So it's really the power of the group, and that's like, you're really ultra successful. That's awesome. So am I, and so is everybody else in the group. But what we're really trying to do is bring together a ton of ultra successful financial professionals in a private group that can then share ideas, right? I think of one that always comes up where, they're trying to hire a new staff person and they don't necessarily know how to structure the compensation. So you pose that question, and you might get an answer from me or John or from somebody else. But what we're hoping is that there are other folks in the community that then share, hey, I just hired a COO, and this is how I structured his compensation, and this is how I gave him equity or don't give him equity, whatever and then it creates this community now that's it's like being a financial, if you're a financial advisor and you're in a retail branch, right? And let's just say it's a Morgan Stanley office or Merrill, it doesn't matter, right? Your world is just that little world for the most part, right? Wouldn't it be awesome if you're able to talk to and share information and gather and ask questions from financial advisors, not only at different firms, but different parts of the country that you may never come across, right? It's like when you go to a conference. John, you mentioned the conference. Sometimes the best part of the conferences aren't the presentations, right? It's the in-betweens. It's the coffee. It's grabbing a drink. And all of a sudden you're part of a group and you're sitting at a table and you're talking about random stuff about the business. And that's where you're learning the most stuff, not some presentation that, some speakers, some lawyers coming on talking about, how to build your ADV or something like that. It's the camaraderie and the sharing of ideas amongst your peer group, at the cocktail reception. This is sort of like the structure and how we envision, at least how I envision that playing out.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I honestly don't believe anything like this has been done in the industry. So I think it's going to really be something that, as you just think about it, it's because of the technology that's out there in the world, right? Like, to be able to be connected to this, to have, the founding members, the community, all of those things together. And then, part of, Frank, what we're doing as well is just for the folks in the community, not to be released to the rest of the world. We'll all be appearing in there for kind of like teleclasses, right? That will be done in real time, but will also live inside there as a recording, right? Forever, where whatever I'm thinking about that day, or Frank is thinking about that day, or one of the other founding members is thinking about, we're going to come in there and talk about it. So it could be a great podcast that we listen to, or a book that we read, or something that we learned, or a mistake we found another advisor made, or a great thing another advisor did. And the concept is to go in there and just share anything we can possibly think of to actually help you, the advisor, get better and learn and be successful. The concept is for us to share it in this form of media, right, in a way that is going to be super impactful to all of the folks inside there. And then the other piece is, over time, my vision for it is, and this is kind of longer term vision, I think it'll just add into, other things. When you start collaborating and meeting other people around the world, what you realize is there's other ways to help each other, right? So it could be a place where, hey, I've got a complicated estate planning question and I don't know the answer. And one of our members might have just dealt with the exact same thing. So to your point before, Frank, maybe someone in your branch office, or if you're an independent advisor and it's just you and a couple of employees or a couple of advisors, maybe you don't understand international estate planning laws, right? As an example. So again, not that we're looking to solve those problems, but you could meet a connection on there that could say, hey, I got a great attorney who that's all she or he does, and I'll hit you privately and I'd be happy to get you their name. So I think as we really start to grow this, I actually don't think we can envision exactly what it will look like right now, because I think it has that level of kind of power and opportunity to just open the doors to many different kind of verticals, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's where it's almost like we don't see the end, right? We know where we are at the beginning here, and some of it's going to evolve, and some of it's going to be based on what the members are looking for, right? We think we have some idea of how to with the sort of the cadence of the meetings, lives. Think about it as lives, doing lives. John and I may get on a call and we'll do a live and we'll just talk, and maybe 7:00 at night or whatever, but we might just talk about something that just happened in the news, or what does that mean? It has an impact somebody, or a deal that maybe John just worked on. And hey, I might ask him, like, well, can you give us some idea of how you structured that deal? Like what was the thought process, and what was the advisor looking to do? Because if you're an advisor and you're thinking about getting into the M&A world, and you have a friend of yours that you're going to approach, you don't want to approach that person and not know what you're talking about, because you may only get one chance at coming across like you know what you're talking about with him. So do some homework, like do prep work. And if you can have someone like John in the group and others, right, that are as successful at acquisitions, and you might pose the question, hey, I have a friend I'm going to approach over the weekend. He's a $800,000 producer. How do I start the conversation? He's 72 years old, and I'm not sure where to go. I'm not sure how to start the conversation. Somebody might have a great answer, a great, sort of, I'll say line, but a great way to open the door to the possibility of becoming his successor or buying his book outright. And so we're hoping that this really becomes and I don't think there is anything in the industry that comes close to this, right? I don't count conferences as that, because it's a one-shot deal, and that's, unless you get someone's business card, you're done after you leave.
Yeah, I think of it, Frank, it's like it's ongoing opportunity to interact with thought leaders in the industry. And, as you were just talking, again, just ideas jump in your mind as you think about what the opportunity here is think about it this way to our listeners, right? When the market had the reaction it had over the last year or two, right? Wouldn't it be nice to just know what I was doing in my practice, or what all the advisors that John Randall actually works with in his coaching practice and with his other coaches? Wouldn't it be nice to have Ray Kelly, who's a leadership guru, talk about emotional competency and how to deliver messages? Wouldn't it be nice to know what was going on with the value of your practice, right? Wouldn't it be nice to know what was going on with deals in the industry if you move from one broker dealer to another, or, so on, et cetera? Wouldn't it be nice to know how to actually, from a marketing perspective, be able to communicate with your clients so that they were feeling in the know as to what was going on in the market? So for a lot of advisors, the only way to be part of a community is to either be part of an organization where you only know the things that organization does, right? So we've all heard the old kind of analogy of, right, the lid, right, or the glass ceiling, right, or the ceiling of complexity is probably the right word. If you're only around people who are $1 million producers or $2 million producers, or have never done M&A, or never recruited, or haven't become the true CEO of their business, or don't know anything about marketing, how are you going to learn those things without being exposed to those things? And what this actually does is it brings all those thought leaders into one place, so that you can actually have your mind open. I share, Frank, with everybody, honestly. I consume, and I know you're the exact same way, Frank, because we compare notes on it. I legitimately consume 15 to 20 hours weekly of content, whether it be reading a book, listening to a book, a podcast, a conference, so on, et cetera. So I'm constantly learning, as are all of our founding members, and we can share all of that insight in our own disciplines, so that it opens up your mind as an advisor who's part of the syndicate, as a member, to be able to just think differently and be exposed to things that otherwise I don't think you would actually be exposed to.
Yeah, it was interesting that you mentioned 10x is easier than 2x. And I love Dan Sullivan, and you were the one that actually mentioned that book to me, and I went out and read it, which was awesome. But ironically, I had done a podcast with another advisor that runs another ultra successful practice, multiple millions of dollars, tons of advisors at Raymond James, and he sent me the book as a gift and a thank you. And the reason I'm saying that is, so here's two highly successful financial professionals, right, that are reading content that has nothing to do with financial services, right? It's not like reading a prospectus of a mutual fund and whatever. It's content about being a business owner, just you happen to be in financial services. And I have felt, and again, this is where you and I aligned all the time and things we talk about, that kind of content and guidance and entrepreneurship and learning is not in the financial service industry. Meaning, when I talk to financial advisors around the country, and most of the time I'll ask them, "Oh, do you know Dan Sullivan, or have you heard of this podcast, or Alex Ramosi, or people that are not a portfolio manager at a mutual fund," right? And nobody knows these people, and they should, because it'll help them become a better. Forget about being a better person, but helps them become a better business person, better entrepreneur that happens to sell financial services, right? It doesn't matter what's the widget. And so for us, for you and I, John, I think because we are John and I literally like send each other links over the weekend. Oh my God, check this one out. This was amazing, right? And I listened to it. I just listened to another one with Alex Ramosi. It was about an hour. It was almost two and a half hours. I listened to it while I was down in Florida. It was really good. And but anyway, so the point is, that's the kind of stuff that we're hoping to bring to the mastermind group and all the members of the group. It's just stuff that they should be hearing about, that they may not be hearing about because in their own little world, it's not talked about. So we're trying to expand your mind and be a continuous learner. So, John, where do they go? You mentioned that there's a waiting list, and we'll obviously have it in our link when we put this out. But where do they go to look at this information and put their application in? As you said, there's an application process. Where do they go to do that?
Yep. I believe it's joinfass.com. Is that what it is, Frank? I actually don't know that I know either. Well, so you both know Frank and I are not much for details, just if you haven't already figured that out. So that's what our team is there to help us with. So one thing you'll learn as being part of the syndicate is delegate, delegate, delegate. So we'll put it on the show notes, but I think it's joinfass.com.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, John and I are. So you'll learn. So that's what we just gave you a synopsis of 10x. 10x is easier than 2x.
Yes, I could tell. Yeah, I could tell the listeners this. We have no idea what is going on operationally because we have great people who can actually do that. But I could tell you, it's an amazing website that's been built by Tina, who you all meet inside of the syndicate, who runs a amazing marketing organization where she comes in and helps financial advisors kind of build their brand, build their messaging, build their whole marketing machine as a outsourced chief marketing officer. She'll be in there teaching as well. But we leave it to Tina. She's our who to make sure all that stuff is connected and it works really well. One thing I did want to hit, Frank, as you were talking, I had one or two thoughts. One, as you were talking, the whole thing that was going in my mind is Tony Robbins, right? Success leaves clues. Okay. So when I think about success leaves clues, this is it, guys. When you connect the dots backwards, go back to where I started in the beginning here, it's being a lifetime learner. And quite frankly, as if you could be in a room, right, with, in this case, it's 7 people who have been very, very successful in their own respective fields, all of which, in my opinion, in an ideal practice model, if you're an advisor and you want to grow the heck out of your business, you need to learn and understand something that each and every one of our founding members do, which is why I call it a family office for financial advisors, right? And success does leave clues. And, when you meet a lot of successful people and then you listen or read what successful people did, it's always a slightly different journey. They get there differently, but it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff over and over. And it's almost always learning from people who are smarter than you, that have just been ahead of you. They just got there and went through the stuff that you need to go through to get to the other side. And that's really what this is about, is we all want to be your quote unquote Sherpa to help guide you. And I just want to help the industry. Frank just wants to help the industry. At the end of the day, I feel blessed. Frank feels blessed. The rest of the members feel blessed that we got to the other side. I mean, we still have a way to go. We're not done. We're going to keep getting better and better. And I don't want our listeners to think we think we're, the greatest thing since sliced bread. I've got a lot of improvement. Frank's got a lot of improvement. We're helping each other improve, right? Well, I'm like, I see things in Frank and I'm like, hey man, can I give you some feedback? And he's like, please give me feedback. Like, tell me how bad I am. I love it when you tell me I suck. Because that's how you get better.
I love it.
Right? And I love to hear how bad I suck as well, because that's how you get better. And there are things that Frank is just better at me than, right? He's seen some stuff that I haven't. And there's some stuff that maybe I've seen that he hasn't seen. So what I did want to do, Frank, is as you and I get going, as you know, we get a little excited, is here's what I say to the listeners. Okay. So Frank LaRosa, you're on his show right now, right? Listening. So, or my show, right? So you're
which was Quantum Growth, right?
Yep. Quantum Growth for Financial Advisors or Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. So Frank is everything, just to have everyone understand who the founding members are, as you know, everything that has to do with recruiting, gets involved in M&A, anything that has to do with moving from one firm to another, understanding the differentiation between different firms. And I think of Frank as a consultant to financial advisors to help make sure they sit in the right platform, regardless of what it is. I think of him as a non-denominational church. You want to be an RA, he knows everything about being an RA. You want to go to a wirehouse, he knows everything. You want to be a hybrid. You want to be at a wirehouse, whatever it is, as you all likely already know, Frank's there to just advocate for you and help find you the best place. And sometimes the best place might be exactly where you are, right? Tina Beck, who I just spoke about, is everything marketing, business development, brand awareness, ran her own marketing agency, is the power behind Frank's marketing company, company's marketing, I should say. And she is also doing all the marketing for Kuttin Wealth, Kuttin Consulting, FASS, which is the Financial Advisor Success Syndicate. So she's in here to be a resource to just help advisors think about how to present their own firm, how to get more clients in the door, how to actually build their brand in their own communities or nationally. An amazing thought leader as it comes to those type of things. David Grau Jr. is really everything succession planning and contracts. That's how I look at it. David, and he does more than that as well, but he's an industry leader in helping make sure you paper your business the right way. If you're going to buy a business, you're going to bring on a partner, you're going to hire an employee, you're going to want to make sure you have the right non-competition agreement, non-solicitation agreement. He's there to help paper things and also help you with practice valuations and kind of selling equity, buying equity, anything that has to do with transactions. Anton Anderson, who I mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast, Anton has trained, I think it's 1,200 plus financial advisors on how to partner with CPAs, enrolled agents, et cetera, how to ultimately go really, really, really deep on building partnerships with centers of influence who could refer and introduce dozens and dozens and dozens of clients. I've got some expertise there as well. What's interesting about how Anton does it is it gravitates to higher net worth business owners and clients, because connected to his company, Elite Resource Team, is a virtual family office with very, very well-known experts in pretty much any high net worth planning area that a high net worth client could be asking for. John Randall, and he's the other Jon, because we're both Jon. Johnny is coach extraordinaire, right? He calls his company Extraordinary Advisors. And anything that you're looking to do in your practice that's around developing people, organic or inorganic growth, driving velocity of your business, just thought leadership of how to structure a practice and whether you should, be thinking about hiring a next person. There's nothing that John doesn't have an experience. He coaches over 50 of the highest growing financial advisors, including my own team in the industry. And when I say advisors, I should say practices. It's probably several hundred advisors, but some of the largest businesses in the country, many Barron's advisors and Forbes ranked advisors are in Jon's coaching roster. And then lastly, Ray Kelly, I think is the last person. I think I'm doing this from memory, but Ray is a senior vice president at Think to Perform. Think to Perform, in my opinion, is the foremost expert, particularly in the financial services industry, about leaders developing leaders, right? And what Ray does is helps you build a leadership culture. For most advisors, and this has been Ray has maybe been the most instrumental person in my business life, because what he's helped me do is build a true leadership culture, continue to develop my leadership skills, and then to develop the leadership skills with the folks inside of my organization, which, as you get to know me better, is really kind of like our key to success is leadership. My belief is all of the founding members of the syndicate are actually exceptional leaders. And that's actually why they've built exceptional businesses inside of their respective fields. What Ray does for a living is develop people to do that. What Think to Perform, the company that he's a senior vice president in, does that for some of the most successful advisors in the industry. And then separately, a lot of people don't know this, Frank, Think to Perform is actually the creator of the BFA designation, which is Behavioral Financial Advice. So for those of you who are interested in kind of studying why people do what they do with their money and understanding that skill set so you can help your clients make good decisions when it's hard to do that, what they do really, really well is teach us kind of the psychology around why people make the decisions that they make, and how, as an advisor and the leader of that relationship with your client, how you can use that BFA knowledge to help those people not make the bad decisions and count on you to lead them to kind of see the whole picture and make those decisions with emotional competency. So I know that was a lot. As I think about it, there's not much more. If you could just learn from those 6 people, and me, I'm kind of the generalist, I guess. I've got a little knowledge in all of those areas. But man, if you could learn from each of those 7 people, right? I don't think there's much that we can't teach you. And here's the other good news, guys. We have our next tier. And by the way, if there's anybody who's amazing at something that isn't one of the professionals that I just spoke about, right? We have plans to bring other members. They won't be founding members, but that will also be in there in the future to add value to the community as well. We want to get this up and running with the 7 of us. And then, there'll be other value add people that have deep expertise in areas that we want to have in the community. So when I think about it, Frank, at the end of the day, okay, and I'm going to ask you the same question, even though this is your show, I think, our show. I don't know what it is right now. We're half on yours, half on mine. It's a show. But at the end of the day, here's what I want, okay? Just to make it very simple. I want great people who are financial advisors that are genuinely nice, good people that want to win, that are lifetime learners, not knowers, that want to be part of a community that wants to do good in the world, help as many clients as we can, because the better you get, the better you help your clients and the more people you can help, right? So it's a little bit of a crusade. I know that sounds corny, but man, if we can help hundreds or thousands of advisors get better, and they can help their clients get better and the people who work for them get better, we get to have, right, a huge, huge, huge impact, much bigger than Frank and I can have trying to do a bunch of 30-minute calls when someone is like, hey, can I pick your brain, right? So to me, that is just a very, very large piece of this. And the second piece in my vision, and some of the coaches out there might not like this, I want people to be able to get it and not have to pay through the leg to get information from people who sometimes haven't actually even done it themselves. There's some coaches out there that they coach, they charge fees, but they've never built anything as valuable as many of our founding members have. And I want to make sure that you can get it without making an investment in something that you aren't going to get the value from. And we want to give it to you for free so that you can have access to what we hope will be a better content and better advice at no cost, then you can get out there in the marketplace by paying thousands of dollars a month for access to the same type of stuff we think we could put in there at no
we
charge.
want to make it reasonable, right? It needs to be reasonable. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I get on this if you follow me on Instagram, which is franklarosa.elite. I've gone on this sort of that tear once in a blue moon about these coaches that talk about running and building a business, but their business is the coaching business. And not that, like, John Randall's got a great coaching business, but he was an advisor, right?
Oh yeah,
he did it, right? So there's a difference. There's too many coaches out there couldn't find what they wanted to do, or they weren't successful in the other areas. They decided, I'm going to be a coach and I'm going to hang a shingle and I'm going to start telling people what to do, even though they didn't do it successfully. Which is why I like to follow Ed Mylett and Andy, and I lean on you sometimes, because you've got proof of concept, right? You know what you're talking about. Ed knows what he's talking about. Andy knows what he's talking about. I know what I'm talking about. And part of it is the mistakes, right? The mistakes. Sometimes you learn more from, and without having to go through the mistakes, from people like us, like, hey, don't do this, or, I did that once and man, that cost me a fortune. That cost me whatever. That was a big mistake. But so that's where you learn those things. And if you're listening to people that have never done it before, they may have read about mistakes, or they may have heard about a mistake. Until you actually make the mistake yourself, you don't really understand the impact, and the solution, or how to see the mistake coming before you make it. So that's what we're hoping to do. But anyway, listen, I'm really excited about it. For me, to your question, I'm just hoping that it adds value to people, right? Again, because that trickles down, right? It adds value to them, adds value to their families, adds value to because there's things on here that we're going to be talking about that don't necessarily translate specifically to the business. It could be how you operate your day. How do you, like, I know I pick your brain about that all the time. What is your day like? How do you structure energy, time, those types of things that people in the financial services industry do not talk about? And so I'm hoping that that's part of the value. It's why you do your podcast. I do my podcast. I have my Instagram account. And I post stuff on there that's motivational, or content from the gym. And every once in a while I'll get someone that'll text me or DM me and say, I really needed that today. I was sort of like having an issue, and what you said today or yesterday really, really sort of got me to pivot or rethink about what I was dealing with today. And to me, that's why I do that stuff, right? That's why I take videos when I'm walking through an airport, or I'm driving in my car, because I think, like, if I'm thinking about something that I think is important, maybe somebody out there should hear it, right? Or is thinking the same thing, or, just that's what I want.
Yeah. One of the things, as you're talking, that I want to genuinely say to our listeners, and right, and so probably a decent way to think about wrapping here is, here's what I know. I have been in this industry since 1994. Okay. Not only are my other 6 founding members brilliantly good at the thing that they do, more importantly, they're genuinely great people. Like, genuinely, great. Like, I'm getting a little emotional, right? Like, legit, they're just good human beings. They want to help. That's why we're doing this. No one's interested in anything other than helping. And at the end of the day, that's what we want in the group, right? Good people helping good people. And I want our listeners to understand this. Like, you know what? There are people who are amazing at being in great shape. That's fantastic. There are people who are great listeners. There are people who are amazing at, that are great school teachers. And we need more of those in the world, right? What you have, I think, in our group are people who are just really great at what they do in the financial services industry. It doesn't mean we're superhuman and we have the whole world figured out and every relationship we have is perfect and we never get mad and we never say things we shouldn't and we don't make mistakes. But what I can say is, genuinely, they're good people that want to help, that have integrity, that have values. I believe when you put people like that together, at the end of the day, good stuff happens, right? And that's what I know will happen. And I don't know, listeners, maybe we'll have thousands. I don't think we even want thousands of people in the group. Maybe it'll be a couple hundred of the right people. Maybe it'll be a couple thousand of the right people. We'll work through all of that. But what I do know is we can make a really, really big impact. We have a lot to share, a lot to give. And what I can promise is our intentions are pure. Our intentions are good, and our intentions are to help. And we all have helped so many people before. And selfishly, I want to hit this, right? This is a selfish act for me to give away everything I know for free. Okay. And it's hard to understand this. I'm on the other side of it. I pinch myself every day and I'm like, my goodness, how did this happen? How do I have a business that's going to do $70 million a year in revenue? How am I financially secure? How have I accomplished all those things? How do I have a great relationship with my wife and, believe I have a great relationship with my kids? And as I look back, I did the work, but people helped me. People taught me. I learned. Some of it was books. Some were people I don't even know. Like you're talking about Ed Mylett, and we're talking about Dan Sullivan and Ed Mylett. It's a perfect example. I've never met Ed Mylett in my life. He doesn't know who the heck I am. I've never met Dan Sullivan in my life, although I'm getting him on my podcast. But outside of it, but they've helped me immensely by listening to them and being around them. This is different because we don't want to be a secret. We want, right, you to have access to us and know us and see us and have us speak to you, kind of like you're doing with Ed and Andy in his program. And I know, Frank talks about these two gentlemen like they're his big brother. I mean, that's the reality of it. We want you all to think about us as we're a little bit of your big brother.
Cool. Awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate that. We're really excited. It is joinfass.com. You can go there. You can click on the sign up now, put your email in. There's a questionnaire that, we're just trying to gauge the types of people that we're going to come in here, because again, we want this to be a group of members that are all in the financial services industry. So like minds sort of, and lifting, rising tides lift all boats. So anyway,
hey Frank,
John,
it was amazing. It was amazing how our half-hour podcast turned into an hour, wasn't it? That was absolutely.
That's what happens with the two of us. So
shocking.
Yeah, shocking, right? Oh my God, Frank and John talked for an hour together. Really? Okay, only an hour?
Yes, shocking. Exactly right.
That's why my wife's like, "Are you calling John on Saturday?" I'm like, "No, babe." She's like, "Okay, good."
Yes, you'll see me tonight. This is good. Yes.
Anyway, so John, thanks for being on the show. And again, for those of you that want to listen to another great podcast aside from Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa, John also has his podcast, Quantum Growth for
financial advisors,
financial professionals, and he's someone that you definitely want to listen to because he has proof of concept, like you said. Running a practice right now that's north of $70 million this year in production. He's done a tremendous job and built a great culture. And so if there's anyone you want to emulate, he's one of them. So awesome. Thanks, listeners. Don't forget to, again, go to our YouTube channel, Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Follow me on Instagram, which is franklarosa.elite. There's some great content up there. Just under 40,000 followers. So I'm trying to get it over 40,000 followers. So let's go. And like and subscribe to our our podcast on Apple or iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening to these shows. So thanks a lot, everybody. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.